about this, when you dream about this, what holds us back as a community?
You know, other people may not like, or, you know, just getting some, a land or a place that works for everybody.
So consensus building, yeah. Because we're all, you know, that's an interesting thing about the unification community is that we all used to live in centers, right? We all had consensus, right, based on a central figure. And then we all, you know, through hometown tribal messiah work, we dispersed completely out to the four corners of the planet. We all tried to develop tribal messiahship, hometown providence, and we all failed mostly to develop a community of faith. And, you know, varying degrees. Some people had success, but the vast majority of unificationists have been struggling to find faith in their respective communities and thrive in a spiritual life. At best, we've been able to survive and keep our families together. But in terms of really affecting the larger community, not so many examples. There's a few bright spots. So now we're in this awkward position where we're all spread out, but we all still have the idealism. But how do we build that consensus now that we've all had our own homes last 20 some odd years? Like, you know, what are we afraid to give up would be one thing. You know, what would have to be given up? You know, like from what I'm seeing and what I envision is, you know, everybody would still have their own homes. You know, it's not like communal living necessarily where we all live in like a big church center as families. You know, we would still have individual dwellings with some kind of place in the middle, like a community center that brings the community together. So what is it? Was it selling your house, your current house? Maybe you like we like where we live. You know, we kind of like it. You know, there's lots of good hiking trails. And, you know, it's a beautiful mountainous area. You know, if we moved like to a flat region, that would be a struggle for us. You know, but although the ideals are important, we do care about leaving a legacy too. I think we're all a little bit worried about not leaving anything behind, you know, in terms of a community.
And it's hard to give up present employment if we're still working. It's hard to just give that up, to start fresh somewhere with no, unless we have a very solid business model that we're trying to create.
Yeah, that was inspiring, though, that you can create wealth in these in a community setting. I think that's something that would have to be core. If you're relying on income from the members, then everybody has to work outside the community, and that's not such community building kind of experience.
There's one community that if anybody would like to come to the Philadelphia area and look at, it's not a big intentional community, but it is a Quaker community. And they have seminars there, and they have space if anybody wants to come in and do a spiritual, you know, retreat. And people stay there. They have dorms, and it's quite quaint and beautiful. And
is that the one in Media? Anyway, we'll talk.
Yeah, is it Media?
Yeah. Well, they have a few different facilities.
I've forgotten the name of it, but it's pretty close to me. If anybody's interested,
it's close to
it's just yet another community.
Yeah.
And they you know, it functions by charging for seminars and having guest speakers come in, and artists show their work there. Our church members have had many like intellectual little forums there, so they know.
Oh, Pendle Hill. Pendle Hill is
yeah, Pendle Hill.
Pendel.
But it's not a big, full-fledged intentional community like we would probably want to do.
Any other obstacles on why haven't we done it as a unification?
Too busy.
Everybody's wrapped up. Busy.
Yeah. We're too busy being busy.
Well, I think that one obstacle is this sounds childish in a way, but you know, we weren't told to do it.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's very true.
What?
We're all doing the hometown thing, you know, trying to work with our families and our relatives, and what do we do after that? There hasn't been some kind of direction, you know, to live for the sake of others.
So Foundation Day, you know, may bring some enlightenment. It may not figure a person who's in charge of the movement, So that may be a consideration for some people.
Well, if engineering will not bring up some wordplay with the foundation day, I will do it. I will say foundation has to do something to found it, and finally we have found it.
Mm-hmm.
So, what to do? Finally, it got to us.
Yeah.
And also to found some
Yes.
words.
Very good.
It's not about somebody else waiting that somebody else is doing something. It's we.
Yeah, I think in the age of settlement that engineer's talking about, it's all about pursuing what you feel passionate about and then doing that internal, external excellence. You know, that's really what this age is all about. And that goes for first generation as well as second generation. So I think now the time, you know, the trench warfare just had to sacrifice everything and just get the job done. Now is the time where we can really pursue things and then by doing that be a witness, you know, natural witness, as Engineer talks about all the time, you know, be a natural witness. And I think the key, for me, the key point of a community is not to isolate ourselves and be insular, but to be really a witness, you know, to develop it in such a way that people get, did you see that unification community?
They want to share the vision.
Yeah. Yeah, so some of these were really good because they had like seminar place where people could come and then experience the love, experience the heart, the shimjung, you know, and then that would be such a powerful witness.
Also health, everything. The people are living there, so all the people's issues become community issues anyway,
Yeah.
and are taken care of, and that includes all three generations.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think schooling is another major obstacle, right? People don't want to pull their kids out of really good schools, for example, even though we all know the pitfalls of public schools. So I think schooling would be a major issue, you know, that would need to be addressed, you know, in any kind of intentional community.
Claudio was also saying that, and he might want to express this rather than me, but it would be important to find a lot of, you know, quite a bit of land, but with proximity to a rather sophisticated population who could be really doing. Not just, like even up here, it's kind of spread out, and people come up here to escape. It's more of a, you know, holiday kind of area, and not real close to a well-educated necessarily population. So he was saying that would be an important thing
In terms of a revenue stream.
Yeah.
Just look at the communities that we saw. I mean, close to Torino, big, very wealthy areas, those videos.
Yeah.
Because people are naturally, have more time, you know, to think about it. They already achieved a lot in life, so they are experimenting more. If you do it around here, I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. You'll be able to influence masses of people who are influential if you're near a large population center.
That also increases their real estate values in terms of purchasing, you know, 300 or 400 acres or whatever the acreage is. The cost of that kind of investment goes up, of course. Rather than if you choose someplace in central Tennessee, you know, the land values would be low, but your realm of influence would be limited.
I think what would be important for me is that there would be other people like me or in similar situations as me. For example, with small kids. I wouldn't want to move my family to some place where there's no other small kids, because then my daughter would not feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So there almost have to be a lot of people going there at the same time that have similar needs, so we can address them together.
One of those films, they have equal amount of adults and children. 50-50. So there's lots of kids.
Yeah, so I think 3 generations is something I think we're all committed to. I mean, that's why people come to Shehaqua, for example, is the whole 3-generation experience. And I know myself, you know, like some people when they get older, they want to live in these older elder communities. I have like zero interest in that.
Yeah.
You know, I think, I want the energy of young people, and you know, young people benefit so much from elders, and young adults benefit so much from elders, and elders benefit so much from children. You know, that's the beauty of what Father talks about with 3 generations.
There has been talk about this, remember, at least a couple of years ago in the DC area, start something like that. I think a group of really committed people who make the foundation.
The founders.
The founders. You
Yeah.
need to find founders. And then others, as it grows,
It's more easily, right?
they come in and they
Right.
see if that fits them. But if we don't have founders, it's not just going to happen. Right?
All communities have that,
Yeah.
from 1 to 12
Yeah.
founders.
That makes total sense. So if we would have unification, feel that that is their calling and that is where they're going to invest the rest of their life in, then I can see us have these communities.
Yeah.
Unless there are these people with that kind of heart,
Exactly.
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The founders.
And Harry and I were talking earlier, and you brought up a good point, is that this is not one community where all unification has come, but it becomes a satellite. It becomes one model community. And then if it's really successful, really well thought out, well developed, very professional, very eco-friendly, all the things that, you know, make it really special, kids, 3 generation, schools, elementary, maybe middle school, whatever, then that becomes a model, a role model for all unifications to come and visit. Then other founders can start all over the country, all over the world, and it can be something that can spread. You know, but it takes you know, a group of people, like Anne-Marie said, to make the commitment. And it takes financial commitment and a little bit of leap of faith, you know. But yeah, you know. But when you think about it, what motivates me to think in this direction is that, you know, we've been given something incredibly precious, something incredibly valuable, and we see our second gens, and as they go out and get jobs, they're also in isolated situations. We had the great benefit when we joined the church, actually, to be in church centers, and as hellish as that was, beautiful. That's where our friends, we all have friends from those days. You know. Yeah.
War stories.
War stories. Yeah, we were like veterans of foreign wars, spiritual wars. And now with the Shehaqua, we've kind of recreated that, but it's on a very seasonal kind of basis. But those relationships still are all year long, and they're very deep. But imagine a community, you know, where we live, breathe, and eat together, you know, and really develop something that we can be proud of. And when I talk to second gens, they're very interested in the 3 generation model. But it has to be at a certain level. It can't be podunk. You know, it can't be sloppy. It has to be really clean and professional. It has to be close to jobs, unless we can create this kind of healthy economy within the community, which I'm sure that's possible, but there would probably also be people who want to work building their resumes or whatever, and they have to feel secure that they can find jobs within an hour of such a community. You know, if you build it in central Tennessee, it's going to be difficult to get very many people interested unless they're really motivated and really entrepreneurial, you know, doing stuff online or whatever as a business. So, yeah, I think location is important to make it attractive.
The founders, thinking in North America, or are you thinking?
Well, can be any place in the world, of course, but yeah, I think in North America, but I don't know many other countries so well. I've lived in America for a while, but just it comes to mind if I think recently, about 3 weeks ago, there was a blessing of 30,000 couples in the Philippines. So also those are now fresh, new, blessed couples ready to do something. And they might just go ahead and, be the first. I don't know. But there's a lot of it's the whole age is coming to a new age. It's even people with make this mystical Mayan calendar connection. There is something ending on the 21st of December and something new starting. So wherever you look at it in any direction, something new is about to begin, and I'm convinced that it's not they which do it, it's us. Us meaning the people. So.
What do you see? I mean, do you see yourself as a founder?
Absolutely, yeah. I have my house on the market and we're ready to go. With not before Foundation Day, because that's also for me an issue. Father gave us a mission until Foundation Day, and we're supposed to actually be successful there, which is liberate all ancestors, distribute the books, and create the foundation for the worldwide blessing, so to speak. So I would never plan to do something ahead or aside of it, but the day after Foundation Day is going to be just 24 hours later. So, and it's worth doing after those 24 hours and the rest of the century. So that's why it's good to, to look, to think, to create, to imagine, to dream. Even Ingenim last week, her last sermon, was about dreaming. And she said, Father is the greatest dreamer, he's the greatest visionary. And she encouraged us all to dream. That's basically the message also there from the founders. What you can dream, what you can envision, you can do.
Everything starts with a dream.
Yes. So, of course, yeah. No illusion dreams, of course. I mean, it has to be something coming from your heart, not from your spaced out ideas.
What you conceive and believe, you can achieve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I came late, and this may have already been covered, but do you see this community as being fully integrated into the society at large, or do you see it to be something somewhat independent and different?
No, our special situation is, and as tribal messiahs, we are supposed to actually, as tribal messiahs, bring liberation and blessing. Not to ourselves, not to our other blessed couples, they're already blessed couples, but to the world around us. So it's actually the opposite. There will be a time where people will want to get blessed because they can recognize the value of the blessing. So just there has to be some landing point where people can connect to.
Yeah, the nice thing about a community is it makes an impact. It's like when people visit here to camp and they experience the collective energy, the love. It's powerful rather than one-on-one. So imagine a community of blessed central families that are all working for the common good, and then you have open house dinners, 3 times a week or whatever, and people come and share food and entertainment or whatever, and then it's very easy to build relationships, build trust in the community, have blessings, once a month, invite everybody, all married couples. I could see a lot of power behind. Just like in the old days, we had a lot of power when we worked together, as individuals. Now we're all families, sometimes 3 generations, but imagine that power vertically centered on God and a momentum that can really make amazing changes. Elk and I have been thinking, that's one reason we started these health retreats, is that someday we'd like to have, an all year round health retreat, and that in this kind of setting, that could be an income source, where you invite people, $500 for the weekend, come, Nancy does her thing, Conrad does her thing, we got all these different people contributing, Paul doing mushroom walks, make it such an exciting dynamic. Works. Claudio could have a restaurant there, like a 5-star restaurant with the most amazing food.
And he would entertain them.
He would entertain them.
And it would be all at home.
Yeah.
It would be all at home. You wouldn't have to go away. People would come.
Right, it would entice people to share what's already their ideal, and a lot of people probably given up hope on it, but if we're living in it, it becomes very expansive.
Yeah, it would attract people who have a vision that could easily implement it into a community setting. Woodworking shop, whatever. There's all sorts. Like the Amish do, like the bread making and furniture making. There's tons of business concepts that could emerge. Certainly, the internet. So many young people are now creating these micro businesses online. That can all be done anywhere on the planet. Just have a warehouse, maybe of products where products can be shipped out, maybe not. A lot of products don't even have to be warehoused anymore. Everything is done, with cyber warehouses, drop shipping, so it's much more, businesses are changing, in the last 15 years. You don't have to have a building necessarily. You can make millions of dollars just with your laptop.
And there's, of course, one aspect which we didn't even cover. When you consolidate, you just have less expenses. You have less bills. Therefore, you actually need less money. If you even get more the better. But you don't need necessarily more if you cut down the expenses, which is when we share. And in the first case, they even made it better. They created a local currency. What that does is it keeps all the value of labor and of services and goods right here. It doesn't go, because now if you buy something at 7-Eleven or whatever, maybe 90 cents from the dollar go some other place. Only maybe 10 cents stay here to pay for that local job or whatever.
So how does that work? Like if you have a bread baker in the community that's also open to the public, then with your internal currency you go buy the bread, that bread maker gets the currency and then can go buy goat cheese from the farmer that's also in the community, that kind of exchange of...
I visited North Haven about 10 days ago, and it's a community in Asheville, North Carolina, and they have also their local currency. It's called a leap. That's how they call it. And you have one leap, which is the value of 1 hour unskilled labor. And you can kind of, figure out what they would be. And then 2 to 4 leaps, they have a different, coin for that, is 1 hour of skilled labor, which would be, massaging or different skills what you apply, and so on. So they have their own internal systems, and you can, of course, you exchange. You exchange services and goods via the leaps.
You can do it like a bartering system. They have bartering systems.
How would you ensure that would it be a social contract or a legal contract that people would keep the resources within the community if that would be beneficial for everyone?
I don't think you could mandate that. It would be too restrictive, wouldn't it? To mandate.
Well, that again, those issues I think depend on the founders,
the principles,
because the founders will also be the ones making the constitution. You can't really make the constitution at a much later stage. You have to do it in the beginning.
So people know what they're getting into.
To set to set all the standards and at least the rough outline, also for later how to connect to this whole network. It has all to be in the constitution to begin with. I'm sure there can be things added to it, but if everyone agrees to it, but that has to be said. These things has to be in the constitution.
What would you do next? I mean, I personally think it would be great if people started to educate themselves about intentional community.
Well,
that great woman that has an online conversation that sits there and she talks about why communities succeed and why they fail.
Yes.
And she's on the co-housing website, is that?
No. In fact, just next door, in the next room, I made up a little book table. Please don't take the things away, just make a note of it, you know. And there's two books of Diana Leaf Christian.
Yeah.
She is the one who is living in that North Carolina community. And about 25 years already, she is involved in community building, and she's a writer and a journalist, and making books and articles about communities. So she is giving 2-day workshops. I have one of the schedules in there also. You can read through it. And that's what I would recommend to start up, that everyone really up to starting or be a founder, meet or invite her to make a 2-day workshop about all these very important issues. And you can ask all the questions about this. That's what I would recommend.
Do you get the facility and then invite her into it? Is that the way it
Just
works?
get in touch with her. At the moment she's in a tour through Europe about community building in Europe. But she's home here, so she's going to come back and just...
I went to a workshop for co-housing in Philadelphia with a few of our members a couple of years ago. And there are people who go around and give these kinds of workshops. In this case, it was an art school actually hosted it. And kind of like our educators conference, where you had breakout sessions, you could go to any of these different sessions, how to finance a community, energy systems, architecture, all kinds of things. So I met some of the professionals that are doing this kind of thing. There are actually development corporations who are going to banks to try to help familiarize bankers with the whole model, so that the bankers will be eager to fund them. There's all kinds of things happening that we don't necessarily know about, but I don't know why I mentioned all that, but just it is, co-housing is becoming
I think it's a trend. I think what you're saying, it's a trend, and intentional communities is not foreign anymore. It used to be just a hippy-dippy thing back in the 60s, and a bunch of liberal hippies all getting together and creating a love community, which, is not a bad thing. It's just that was the stereotype. But I think now there's all sorts of intentional communities, environmentally centered, or just common values, safe communities. Some of them are formed just to keep costs down, and to live more responsibly in the environment.
For instance, the workshop I mentioned, the first lecture is 7 structures every eco-village or intentional community needs to put in place in the beginning. So it's nuts and bolts to start up. Or, next lecture, 19 steps, processes and tasks people typical to village or community.
Typically meaning the mistakes people made, or good steps?
No, processes.
Processes.
Steps take to create.
Right.
Is this one of your questions?
Yes. That's the workshop. So it's nuts and bolts, no waste of time. The next thing is, for instance, the eco-village membership process. How you actually, with the members, you know, how you become a member.
So members
what
are
it
different than the
takes.
core, you mean? Different than the core leaders?
Different levels.
Yeah.
There's the founders,
Founders, yeah.
and then there is all the rest of the people coming to it
Join in.
under different circumstances and conditions. And that has to be discussed and agreed upon. There are different conditions. You could kind of buy yourself in, then you like a co-founder or a second whatever founder, or you can be just like a long-term guest. That's on the other end. You're still part of it, but as a guest.
Yeah.
So, and everything in between. Then the next thing is, of course, buying land. Then creating the community glue.
We have a lot of glue.
We have a lot of glue.
Right.
And they don't fall in nature. It's
None.
great.
We worked it all out.
Only glue.
Then it says financing land, legal entities, internal community finances, how to set up an internal system. Then sociocracy. Sociocracy is a tool to actually make decisions
How to govern.
and govern a community. It's a tool and a skill. And sociocratic elections even, one lecture about that. And the eco-village clinic. So that's a lot of things, and I'm sure upon request you can also, have certain
Requested
topics.
Yeah. And what's her cost?
I don't know, but that you can find out.
Does she come to individual groups and
I would say so. If you're a lecturer, I would say so. Out of
Does she have a home base? Does she give the presentations
in North Carolina is her home base, but mainly she is traveling because communities are not going to come to her, but she's going to educate.
Right, so if we got together 20 people, she would come, everybody pitches in $200 or whatever it is to come and support a speaker of that caliber. Right, yeah.
does she give the whole seminar herself? Does she have a core of people that have different special needs?
I can't, I have never attended yet. I wanted to, but unfortunately she's now in Europe and I'm here. I want to talk to you in a seminar, but so.
Did you talk about ideal size of this community?
I've heard the ideal size. There's around 30 families. More than that, it becomes impersonal. And like even that one, they said that they had 1,000 people, but they were organized in pods of 20 to 30.
Right.
Like families of people.
Exactly.
Because if it's less than that, then the certain egos or certain personalities become dominant. And if it's more than that, it becomes impersonal.
Exactly. It's this is this rule of thumb. It's like a golden rule. And there's also even a housing or the housing models, even distances like 10 feet or so from your porch. There should be some kind of a walkway. Even they went into these kind of details. What you feel comfortable, and closer would feel more uncomfortable. More distant would feel too distant.
Yeah,
and also
a little bit on the culture, right? Yeah. Japanese can be much tighter, Europeans, Europeans, Americans much wider.
But it all can be like Indian always said, rubbed off. So rubbed and somehow changed. True.
Is this what you're thinking, 30 families?
Yes.
Would that be your goal?
Yes. But this is also, it's like the official experience, just like Sue said, this is the best size. And also a kind of community building where those 30 families get together should be visible from every house. You should have one room at least where you could see at least the top or a bit of that building, of that place, so you would never lose touch with it.
Well, some places actually make it so that when you're walking from your car to your place, that you're walking near
Past that,
the central point.
Right,
Where you're touching base, where you're not isolated, if you like.
Right.
Where
So
you
there's-
just pull up to your own place and you go inside and you never have to see
Right.
anybody else. Kind of, it's more designed
Right.
for.
So there's just already many models, working models,
Yeah.
many experiences and reflections. And so there's, once you get into that, you'll see there's plenty.
So I mean, we've talked about having like 3 phases. Phase 1 would be like 12 homes built, you know, maybe with the beginnings of a community center of sorts, and then phase 2, you know, so you end up with 30 to 40 homes, families, whatever. So it wouldn't be necessarily something you would have to do all at once. You know, once you have a prototype, then it's easy to market the concept to unification communities, to Maryland community, New York metro area, Boston, you know, Pennsylvania. Then people, of course, get interested. Once there's a blueprint, once there's a brochure, once there's like reality attached to it, then people get very interested. Takes it out of the idea stage into something concrete.
Plus, there are several focus points on community building already. Like you can build it, for instance, on closeness. That means a very close community, they meet like every day and they eat together, for instance. Or they have a shared kitchen or living room. So that's the closest type. And you can build it like this or share it like this, or the opposite, you know, more distant. You can focus on ownership, like a corporation owns it, everybody is a shareholder, or everybody owns it and nobody has the sole ownership, like every is a single owner. Yeah? So, and anything in between. I think there's many models. You can live in one building, or you can live in little villages, circling, like in that first one, circling a lake or a forest or whatever. You know. There's many different. There is not one particular model that I would like to say to it. It's not just like creating this one and multiplying, like Ingenim said last time, like copying. You know, it's different. It's very creative. Yeah.
Well, a group tried to do a community that are in a city, which is going to be far different than something with farming at the base and out in the country. People have taken like a city block that was deteriorating, bought the whole city block, and then all the in between, all the inside of it became like a garden, and they all shared. They've done really cool things. Yeah.
There's many creative ways of building that according to their circumstances locally.
Yeah, and to have all our own organic, natural food grown, that'd be like really awesome. As the food sources become questionably more and more difficult, perhaps, you know, there's a lot of security that comes with this kind of thing. You know, if the world gets very turbulent, you know, then this is a good, safe way to develop and to protect future generations.
Do you know something I don't know?
So who wants to be a founder? Okay, I'll read it.
There's a certain monetary
Yeah,
requirement.
there's financial input. It can be anywhere from 20 to 100,000 each. You can be equity.
Well, to buy a home within it.
To
buy the land.
You got to buy the land. You
And build the
got to
house.
pay a developer.
I heard a higher figure for founders from Sally. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
You probably know a
of
lot.
course, it depends on the circumstances and on the amount of founders. If there are like 3 founders, it
Lot more.
requires
Right.
a larger amount of
Right.
money, of course.
Right.
You know? And also on the price of the land. if of course, if everybody agrees to have a land close to cities, or like you said, more expensive or more, how did you say that word, more knowledgeable people, probably the land is going to be more expensive there, or you get less land. There's always options, and the founders have to cope with that, and if it's not enough, you just have to, get more of those.
Get investors or investors.
Definitely, my absolutely main point is it has to be started as a community. There could not be one owning the land and the others kind of, sitting by it. It has to be a co-ownership.
Is that for accountability reasons, or what is your main reason?
Well, just to cut out again the hierarchy. Because if one owns the land and there's many good friends around, in the end it could come out that the one who paid for it said, listen, I paid for it, so I'm gonna have the last saying to that. Or it could be the others just walk away, and if it didn't work out, this is all a part of those failure issues. Mm-hmm. And 90% of community building is fail. Mm-hmm. So you can't do lightly about it. Mm-hmm. It has to be, I would say also 90% has to start here and be discussed and over again, and in writing, and really manifested. And even the Constitution be created before it becomes real and actually is purchased. And what most of the failures were, people said, oh, that's the easy part. Let's buy the land. Okay, put the money together, let's buy the land. Okay, now we have the land, now what? And that was big failure. Because somebody's gonna stuck with all the debts and all the problems.
There has to be a clear purpose that's based on spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual needs, or whatever. I mean, it really makes a lot of sense. For example, if there are family communities for 2 and 3 generations, then among those there will be elders. There has to be clear policies about care systems for children and the adults and whatever for every generation. And there's a purpose to this. It's not just getting together to make gardens, which is great, but the commitment is based on lifetime issues. And that has to be very clear for everyone. What are your needs at different times? Are those needs going to be met? Can we contribute to one another's needs? And is there a commitment to those points?
Also, what I saw in that second, that was the lady, she spoke just a little bit, and she said, in the community, you also have all the issues come out, right? Did you hear that when she was
the
talking?
limitations.
All the limitations come out, and so the people who are part of that community, they have to at least be committed to growth and to internal discipline, and because these things will come up and get faced with it, and then you learn how to overcome them. So just from that verse or from that word, I realized that is a community that's serious about,
spiritual growth.
Spiritual growth. Yeah.
And this is because they have acquired skills. And that is also part of this workshop, some basic skills for problem solving and also decision making. There are skills. It's like learning a language. It's a skill. You have to learn that, and then you know it, how to do it. And everyone, that's part of the Constitution, for instance. Everyone has to
contribute
to behave like that.
Yeah.
Like the the native Indians, for instance, they had this very simple rule. It was called the circle way. So every once in a while the whole tribe or representatives came together, sat in a circle, and one had the talking stick. And there was a very simple rule to it. You can only talk if you have that talking stick, period. And you can talk as long as you want, you cannot be interrupted. And when you disagree, it doesn't matter, it's not your turn. And the talking stick, rule number 2, is passed on, and like on the right side or whatever, it's clockwise or so. So when there's so and so many people, like 10 people, maybe person number 9 already after so many listenings got the answer from all the things what came up maybe at person number 4. Yeah? So it solves itself. Just that simple. Counseling is another tool. It's just a simple tool that everyone agrees on. If somebody has I would call it emotional emergency, like somebody gets upset or something about something and gets all emotional, it's an emergency. That's the rule. You have to treat it as an emergency, and it needs like a counselor, which is anybody from the community, even somebody not involved at all. And the only rule is it's an emergency and it has to be dealt right away, and you just shut up and listen. Everybody can do that. It's a simple rule. So if the emergency occurs, like somebody gets upset, the person's responsibility is just to get hold of somebody else. That's their own 5%. And that other person has to respect that, drop everything and say, I'm going to give you 10 minutes or whatever you need, because it's an emergency. And then this person, in all the anger or rage or whatever, talks it out. And in many cases, with the other person listening to that, many things get also solved in that person's heart, because it's an emergency. The hormones flow like crazy, it's an emergency. So yeah, you don't have to go to university, you don't have to read books for that. It's a simple rule, for instance, and it works. Yeah.
Okay, we got about 10 more minutes. Does anybody else want to say anything?
You have been looking already somewhere? I mean, do you have a...
Yeah, we looked at a couple places in Pennsylvania, as potential, just for brainstorming, nothing really. Neil Angelino's been kind of leading that charge because he's in the real estate. So we've looked around the Allentown, Easton, Bethlehem region, because it's like an hour from a lot of jobs, and the land is still average in cost, I would say, and it's scenic, it's fresh air, it's Pennsylvania, lower taxes than say Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and also a little bit more community friendly because of all the religious groups that have come out of Pennsylvania, a little bit more friendly on that level.
Some of the most successful communities have been artists, for example, with West Beth in New York City, in the middle of New York City, in Manhattan. There's a huge building that was transformed from an old telephone company building, huge apartment building for artists. People have to apply, show their artworks, their space for sculptors, painters, poets, writers, every kind of art. And then within that community, they have exhibits, gallery space, events and performance times, and it's been very successful for many years. Many families and individuals who are artists qualify, and it's been quite an interesting. West Beth was called. That's one example of a clear theme. People, they can work at other jobs, but they have to show that they are artists producing artwork in some way, fine and performing arts.
Another model that some have thought about is the fact that a lot of the Catholic churches are struggling because of the predator-priest issue, are losing membership and are going into, they're going bankrupt and having to sell their properties. And in a community, if you buy a church property,
to turn it into a community that would include taxpayers. Communities are often much more amenable to someone coming in and buying a church property and adapting it to their.
And they're beautiful properties.
And they're beautiful properties. So we could be looking for that a situation.
Yeah, you inherit a certain respectability immediately.
Right. You become a friend of the town.
They want you there.
Yeah.
They're paying taxes.
And I think, what we have in, say, as a Pennsylvania location based on the Shehaqua Foundation and also our relationship with Love and Life Ministries, it would be very easy to get, in terms of marketing a community, I think there's certain value there, because we have, major connections to the Maryland, D.C. community, New York, New Jersey, New England. There's already built in, there's like 400 families in the Shehaqua database. And then, of course, we have relationships with all the district managers. There's a lot of things going on this foundation that's been created over the last 16 years that would make marketing a community really relatively easy on the marketing side. Once a brochure is made, then getting the word out, Joshua Cotter is becoming more and more familiar with, Shehaqua, of course, Dr. Ann. It'd be easy to get a platform to speak at the various gatherings to talk about creating this kind of community and what the level of investment would be. Once all those details are worked out, it would be relatively easy to make it happen. And I think that's a consideration, not necessarily the last word, but.
So you don't think the first thing is to buy the land? No. No.
That's the last thing.
That's also.
Looking, you can do anytime. Buying is the last thing. Looking, is the first thing. Of course, you can look all the time. And there are always things coming up and even better things. And I think even the more you wait, not endless, but the more you wait within a few months or so, the better deals going to come up because more and more people looking for those things. So, but buying is definitely the last thing. Everything has to be worked out before.
Well, also just the fact that you're doing a joint investment in a property, that's also
because
you're
the
drawing it up so that it's even the legal aspect of in case somebody wanted to opt out, things like that.
When they in co-housing, the business model is referred to, this kind of a thing is usually referred to as a condo model. It's got a lot of the same elements. And so if you're a developer, would think of it kind of as a condo scenario, where you're building multiple units with certain shared facilities. And I think they look at the funding, they look at the building and everything in those terms, and the funding of it. But the advantage is we would have people lining up to buy in, to be part of it. It would make it easier for us to find an interested developer who also might. There's different ways of approaching it, but sometimes developers will get the money and do it, and then knowing that there's
if they know there's enough interest. Right?
Yeah. Whereas a lot of things, when developers are developing and they're just starting out somewhere and building a condo, they don't know who's actually going to want to come along and buy necessarily right away.
Right.
You've got a group of people,
Yeah.
I would think there'd be interest.
Right.
And someone, a developer coming along who would be interested in taking it on.
Yeah, I think there's at least 1,000 families, in the mid-Atlantic, northeast area, maybe more, that would potentially be interested.
I think the very important thing is if you kind of want to make the planning or developing to give it away, for instance, then you have to have an even clearer plan. What's going to happen with all this? Like what kind of job opportunities are going to be created? What kind of businesses are going to be there? Who? Many details. Because if it should be developed from somebody outside, that person has to be informed very clearly, in detail. And in order to do that, the founders have to be very detailed about it.
And long term too.
Right, and long term.
25, 30
If we do it ourselves, we can start as it goes, with a small founding community, and then just expand. Then we wouldn't need any outside help, probably, not for developing. But it depends.
Wouldn't we in effect be the developers, the founding people being the developers, setting the concept and the idea and drawing the design of the kind of village we want? Then you get a general contractor who knows about those kind of things, and you hire an architect to build what we want, but we retain control of what we want. It's just like when you buy a house, you don't have to have a realtor. If you know what you're doing, you just set it up. You have to have an attorney, do all the legal stuff. That's it.
Well, developers have to have access to the funding, right, to make it doable on the scale you want.
They usually have relationships with banks and lenders, kind of streamlines the process.
But you can give them the idea, the blueprint, and they can build from that. I mean, usually they do that, and based on discussions,
Yeah, and there's like I was telling Gregg, there are developers who specifically do co-housing communities who are gifted at coming in and working with a group and getting consensus. They do it for a living. They know how to do it. They know how to. They charge you actually to come to their meeting. Usually, they charge a couple $250 to come to the meeting, and then they go through every single detail of the design and whatnot, get consensus, and just do it. And they know how to do it quickly and effectively.
Yeah, which I think makes a lot of sense. We also have Michael Stewart, a very accomplished second-gen architect who's very interested in this concept, and he already has a really good foundation as an architect, and he would understand the unification mindset, for example. What would be important for that kind of community, thinking about things that lay people like ourselves would never think of. But as an architect, he would have the kind of mindset to be thinking about.
Yeah, he's interested in being deeply involved.
Yeah.
He came for a meeting. He's already sent us out some models, potential models. So if you had a flat piece of land, you could do whatever you want, what it could look like.
Has anyone talked about the concept of a timeshare version of this? And the reason that occurs to me is that inherent in that would be some amount of flexibility, because even though this idea is attractive to me, for example, one of the things that concerns me is having to commit more than I want. I actually enjoy where I live right now. So the notion of several months of the year going to the community and living, and then returning to my own home is an attractive notion. That flexibility aspect appeals to me. A timeshare version of this might allow people like me to spend summer, might go back to my little nook in the woods lifestyle that is also attractive to me.
Absolutely. This is what many communities call working guests. There's models from like 1 day to 1 year. And everything in between. Basically what it is, it's you bring in your time, your labor, and you lodge and eat there for free. But you're part of the community.
In a farming setting?
Farming. Well, you can be an artist, or it doesn't matter. I visited one brother. He's making different sculptures. Somebody's interested in that. Or in this last, what we have seen, musical instruments. There's lots of possibilities. If you are interested to bring your labor and your skills in there on a timeshare basis.
Call them in to make murals for your buildings or whatever.
Yeah,
endless possibilities.
Okay, let's maybe we can offer a prayer. We can stand up and